Ready to get woke? I'm Rick Heyer, and this is Woke Patriots. Today I want to talk a little bit about Joe Biden and a couple of things that he did this week, a couple of things that he said this week that go to what we've been saying about Joe Biden for quite some time now. The first thing is Joe has a history of corruption with his son Hunter and several of his family members dating all the way back to his Senate days. And Joe is pretty corrupt, been mixed up in some bad stuff for a long, long time. But I do want to say I feel a little bit bad for Joe because I do believe that he is actually suffering from dementia at some level. And it seems to be pretty serious. I think that he has moments of clarity. Obviously, there are interviews that he's been on, and he's done quite well. I don't think he's completely insane up to this point. However, I do think that he is getting there. And some of these gaffes, I mean, people kind of started off calling them gaffes. I think they're a little more than gaffes, and I've identified a couple of his gaffe personality types. The first one is that I don't think that Joe has very good judgment in who he's talking to. He makes some bad choices. I think a lot of the hair sniffing and the child groping and things like that, they're kind of all relate over to the bad judgment part of Joe's sickness. But I also think that there's another side, which is the aggression. You know, he's very aggressive. He got aggressive with the auto worker. I don't know if you guys remember that video or not. I'm not going to play that clip, but he put his fingers in the guy's chest and told me he was wrong. He got nervous. He talked about the AR-14 instead of the AR-15, and he got a little bit mixed up, and he was very aggressive in that moment. He called somebody a dog-faced pony show, something to that effect. Very aggressive. He called another guy a liar. You know, you're a liar, sir, and challenge somebody to a push-up contest. I mean, he gets very, very aggressive, very, very in your face. So I think those are two different personality types that have comprised some of Joe's behavior. And the media up till recently has been calling them gaffes. I don't really think that they're gaffes. I think that they're probably all actually related to this dementia that he apparently is suffering from. So in this first clip, this was just a couple of days ago in an interview from his basement. Joe is speaking with somebody and he's talking about his campaign. And you really can't put this guy in front of a camera without expecting something. So I think we're all watching, not just to see, Joe's, what is your platform, what's going on. We're kind of watching because we want to see, what is Joe going to say? This is going to be great. And so thanks, Joe, for the content. I really appreciate it. So this first clip is Joe talking to a reporter. And he basically says that he is going to beat Joe Biden. And I honestly believe that he will end up beating Joe Biden. And so I agree with him on this point. I don't think that Trump is really going to have to beat Joe Biden anyway, because I think Joe Biden is probably going to end up getting replaced. Anyway, here's that clip. Take a look, and then let's talk a little bit about it.
I'm prepared to say that I have a record of over 40 years and that I'm going to beat Joe Biden.
I am going to beat Joe Biden. That is literally what he just said. And even more surprising than the fact that he said that he is going to beat himself, I'm assuming that he means in the presidential race. At least I hope that's what he means. Anyway, even more surprising than that was that the person doing the interview didn't even blink at it. I mean, he just completely ignored that it even happened, and Joe kept on speaking. And I don't think Joe realized that he said that. I think his full intention was that he was going to beat Joe Biden. I mean, it's all he's heard on the news is that someone's going to beat Joe Biden, and I'm sure he wants to be the one to do that. So, that kind of goes to what I think a lot of the chatter is that you hear when people are talking about Joe and his dementia. He says several things like that. You can tell by the look on his face in some of these gaffes that he's confused. He has lost his train of thought. He can't really string together all of the words that need to go in the sentence. And you can just tell there's a link in the chain that's missing there. I don't think that it is as serious as it could be, and I don't think it's as serious as it's going to be. But I do feel bad for Joe in this respect. I think that they're pushing him out there. I think that they are biding their time. They've got to figure out a plan, and by they I mean the left. And while they're devising this plan, while they're trying to figure out what they're going to do, they have to pretend like Joe is still okay and that they're going to still run on Joe. So in the meantime, I'm sure he's feeling a lot of pressure and stress, and he does a lot of smiles, and when he does fill those gaps. I've watched a couple of these interviews from beginning to end, and they're not completely gaffes. I mean, the man can get his ideas across fairly decently for the most part during these interviews. If you can kind of get through the slurring, and you can kind of get through some of the other hiccups there. You can kind of see a person in there somewhere. So I do believe that there's another side to the Joe Biden dementia problem, and that is the aggression, like I was talking about a little bit earlier. Joe has a tendency to get out there, and if he's challenged, if he is if somebody questions him, or if he gets a tough question, he tends to get a little bit aggressive. The media, the mainstream media anyway, has been very, very friendly to Joe, very softball type questions when he's being interviewed. And, he'll talk about his family and his sons, and he'll, and a tear will come to his eye, and he'll talk about things. So he's not really being asked any hard questions. He's not really being pressured. And when he is questioned about anything, he tends to fold pretty quick and regresses directly into the aggression. And I think that it speaks a lot to who Joe is and what we can expect from President Biden. If that were to ever come to pass, I think that we'd be screwed basically. For him to be able to communicate with anybody that challenge his ideas. I mean, look, these summits where world leaders meet, dealing with lobbyists, getting, looking at tough bills and reading things, staying up to date on current events. And these are all very stressful things that take a work ethic alone of 5 people. Joe Biden, however, feeling the pressure of even the daily work of being the president of the United States, it's almost laughable when you think about it. So in this next clip, this was also this week, this was something else that happened. He was being interviewed by somebody, and he made a statement that he looked at the camera, he came in close to the camera, and his eyebrows came in, and you could see this aggression in him. And he said, if you still are undecided between Trump and me, then you ain't black. And this has caused a big stir in the media. There's been a lot of cover up. The mainstream media is trying to pretend like this didn't happen, and that's just been kind of washed over. However, the more conservative news outlets and bloggers and vloggers and YouTube have picked it up, and it's a pretty big deal out there. It's a very racist remark, for number one. Number two, I think it was asinine to assume that all blacks are Democrats, and to assume that blacks can't be conservative, or that by being conservative or by being for Trump, that somehow or another makes you less black. This is a total groupthink philosophy that I think Americans have pretty much abandoned the whole groupthink. And at least conservatives and people on the right, we're very concerned with our liberty, we're very concerned with our freedom, and especially we're concerned with our individualism. And we're gaining that back now. People are kind of fighting back. But I think that this statement was innocent by Joe. And what I mean by that is Joe believes that. Okay, he wasn't trying to be nasty to anybody. But this statement is the culmination of old school thinking Joe from the 60s and 70s. That's how he sees people of color, and that they are all one group, and that if one of them thinks that OJ is innocent, then they all should think that. And if one of them votes Democrat, then they should all vote Democrat. And that is Joe's belief. It isn't that he's trying to be nasty or anything like that. And the fact that he gets super aggressive about it, it just shows that Joe's judgment is completely impaired, that he would say this. The interviewer, by the way, was a black man. And so I find it very interesting that Joe would say this to him in response to the gentleman asking him, I'd really like to know more about your platform. I'd really like to know more. And Joe basically answered that by saying, if you're still undecided, then you ain't black. And so I find this very offensive. There are a lot of black people out there in the conservative movement. And I mean, I absolutely love woke black conservatives. That is just, it's amazing to me to see, and I love it. And it really sheds a light on this clip that I'm going to show you from Joe Biden. Okay, so just stand by for this, and we'll talk about it after the clip.
If you have a problem figuring out whether you're for me or Trump, and you ain't black.
Well, you heard it from Joe himself. If you are undecided, you ain't black. And so this is really, this is something that I think everybody needs to hear and everybody needs to see. This is a man that, despite all of his other problems, despite the dementia, despite the Hunter Biden corruption, despite the connection to Obamagate, despite all of that, this is a man that, if that stuff didn't exist, he is still living in 1962. Either that or he has reverted back to 1962 and is including black people even in the conversation because he has to. Okay? If you can't see that, then you need to be woke. And that's why we're here on Woke Patriots. Thanks for joining us.